up everybody? It's Amanda. Welcome back to my channel. As you can see from the title of this video, it is not going to be an easy thing for me to talk about. It's not rainbows and butterflies in this video. We're gonna get deep and personal. We are gonna be diving into mental health talk, and specifically my struggle with it in my recovery process and my story with mental health. I have struggled with mental health since I was 16 years old. Anxiety, depression, eating disorders, all things that I've struggled with. So this video is kind of just going to be about me and my struggles with it, and hopefully I'll be able to help some of you or somebody you know who's going through these things, and I can be a source of hope and guidance and support through this. And that's mainly what I want to do with this channel. I want to help people get through dark times, and yeah, so I'm just going to share my story. I want to preface it by saying please no hate. You know, it's already hard enough for me to talk about this, and then to put it out on the internet is a really big deal for me. I'm just trying to help. I'm trying to share my story. I finally feel I'm in a place where I'm comfortable enough to talk about it and share it with people in hopes that I can help others. So please no hate, only love. This is really hard for me, so let's get right to it. All right, so my mental health journey started when I was 16, a sophomore in high school, following some injuries from sports that, you know, really had an impact on my life, and I was forced to give up sports, and that was devastating for me. You know, sports were my life. It's how people identified me, basically. You know, people thought of soccer, they thought of me. They thought of me, they thought of soccer. You know, it's just who I was. I was very competitive, I was very talented. Not to toot my own horn, but yes, you know, I had a gift, and me giving that up due to injuries was heartbreaking for me, and it was all that I had known. And so that's when my life really started to change. And, you know, injuries that made me have to give it up was a fractured back in 2 places when I was 12, broken collarbones, broken wrists. I had hip surgery at 14 because I ripped my hip apart from soccer. Following that, I had multiple concussions, probably 3 or 4 concussions, one of which was very bad. And, you know, there was memory loss, my first ever concussion. It took me a year basically to recover with migraines and all of that, and that happened the end of my freshman year of high school. I had to relearn math with that concussion. I couldn't do anything except addition, subtraction. Couldn't tell you what number went where for division, whether it was on the top or the bottom. Nothing made sense anymore to me. So with that in school, it was extremely difficult. I was anxious to go to school because I was taking advanced math classes, because before all this, I was great at math, and I was in an advanced math class at the time, and I would cry before going to school. I didn't want to go, couldn't get out of bed. I was depressed, I was anxious. My parents would try to get me to go, and I would refuse. I'd sit there and cry, I'd stare at the wall, I'd scream at my parents, who didn't deserve that at all. They were just trying to help and figure out what was going on. So with that, I missed a lot of school. And of course, when you miss a lot of school, you're not learning that stuff. So that even made my anxiety 10 times worse, because I was missing all the information. I didn't know what was going on in classes. And then for me to go and try and figure it out was just too much for me at the time. My brain just could not take it. So I went full shutdown mode and stopped going to school for, I think I missed maybe 40 days total my sophomore year. And, you know, that's not okay by any stretch of the imagination. And I knew I needed help. I just was ashamed of it and did not want to admit that something was wrong. I wanted to deal with it on my own, didn't want to go to doctors, didn't want to go to therapists, but I needed it because, again, you know, I was in a very dark place. I would lay in bed, sleep all day in the dark. I would cry. I would have panic attacks. And it got to the point where I finally realized I do need help. and my parents begged me, please let us take you somewhere. So I went with it, and I went to a nurse practitioner, and they diagnosed me with anxiety and depression and prescribed me some medications. And that was fine. I was okay with that. I just had to tell them, you know, how I was feeling, what was going on, and that was a fine experience for me. I realized it's okay to ask for help, and I did. And I got the medicine, and I started to feel a little bit better, but they wanted me to go to therapy. And at the time, I was like, heck no, I'm not going to therapy. I don't need it. I don't want it. Again, I was ashamed. I didn't want to go to a shrink. In my head, I was like, I don't need that. I did, but I refused. And my parents, again, begged me, and they would take me literally up to the door or to the parking lot of these therapists just to talk to them because things were so bad. And I would scream at them. I would cry. I refused to go in. I would lock myself in the cars. And, you know, I was the absolute worst to deal with. And, you know, now looking back, I feel awful. But also at that time, I wasn't ready. I wasn't mentally there to talk about deep things. And one time I did make it into a therapist, and we did not click. We did not mesh. I found her to be aggressive and not understanding of me and my situation, and just not very empathetic or sympathetic towards me. And it really turned me off to the idea of therapy, and I wanted absolutely nothing to do with it after that. And, you know, that upset my parents because they really wanted me to get that help, and I just was totally against it. I said I would take the meds. I will not go to therapy. So that's what I did, and I ended up dropping out of that advanced math class and going to the regular math class. Still the same topics and everything, just one wasn't as advanced and fast-paced as the other one, and I thrived in that class. And, you know, I was getting 95 to 100% on my math tests. I was explaining topics to my classmates. It just was so much better. And I was going to school. I wasn't having that anxiety anymore. Everything was fine. I was on the medicine. I was understanding topics. I was going to school. I was happy. I was hanging out with my friends more. And, you know, life was really, really good. And things were great until my senior year. And I got very, very sick and had to be in the hospital for a very rare illness called Lemire syndrome, which basically is being septic. And if you're not in the healthcare field or you don't understand what that means, just means you have bacteria growing inside your bloodstream, and it's affecting your entire body systemically. So I was in the hospital with that for 2 weeks and went home with a PICC line in this arm. I still have a scar from it. And I had blood clots. I got pneumonia. I missed the first 2 weeks of my senior year because it happened the second day of classes. My senior year is when I got really sick. And, you know, that again put me back because I missed those first 2 weeks. Maybe they weren't major topics I was missing because it is the first 2 weeks of school, but to me, it was missing everything. And I started freaking out again and getting really anxious and not wanting to go to my math class because I was in an advanced placement math class. So I missed those topics. In advanced placement classes, you're moving like that. So I got really, really stressed out again, and I started to shut down again. And eventually, I did pull myself out of that through the medications and everything. Still not going to therapy at this time. I made it through. I got myself together, finished out my senior year strong. Then I went on to college and life was great. I met my boyfriend freshman year, who is amazing. I met the most amazing people, have the best friends here, and life was amazing until my sophomore year of college, following my sophomore year, I should say. And there were a lot of life changes that had gone on around me and in my life at the end of my sophomore year. And, heartbreak, devastation, loss, a lot of things were happening. And I never really got to cope myself, I feel. And I put on a strong face that everything was fine, everything was gonna be fine. And, my boyfriend went home for that summer. He stayed where he lives with his family, his mom and his siblings. And I stayed in Cincinnati. I had a PCA job at one of our hospitals. And my friends that were here were also working, and I never really saw them. I was day shift, they were night shift, or they were working at totally different places and not in a hospital. So I really felt alone. And after everything that I had been through the past probably 2 or 3 months, it all just hit me, and I was alone. I had work to worry about. I didn't have my friends around me. I didn't have my boyfriend around me, and none of this is their fault. It was just, it affected me mentally. And I slipped into an eating disorder, and I don't know what necessarily caused it. I had been working out at the gym with some friends all sophomore year, and I don't know if it just got to a point where I decided I was going to outwork everybody or made it into a competition, because I do have that competitive attitude from sports. I don't know what caused it. I don't know if it was not being able to cope with what had happened the past few months, but it happened, and it's nobody's fault. It just happened. And I became very conscious of foods and very calorie conscious and stuff like that, and making sure I was working out all the time. I would go to work, and for lunch I would have a Special K bar and a yogurt. One was 90 calories, one was 80 calories. I began counting everything that I had calorie-wise, and I would calculate what would give me the lowest amount of calories for the most amount of food that I could eat that day at work. And mind you, I'm working in a hospital as a PCA. I am constantly going back and forth. I'm walking probably anywhere 4 to 6 miles on a 12-hour shift is what I'm walking. I did not need to be calorie conscious. And after work, I would go to the gym, or I would go run around campus or my neighborhood. And I was burning off those calories. So it didn't matter what I was putting in my body, but to me, I needed the smallest amount, which is not a good thing, and it's not a good sign. And I knew it, but I still did it. And I would rationalize it. When people would ask me about it, I would say, oh, I'm just not really hungry, or I don't really have a lot of time on my lunch breaks to eat a whole bunch. So I would rationalize it. I would make excuses, but in my head, I knew there were different reasons, different motives, and I didn't want to admit to it. And it got to the point where whatever I was eating, I was going to the gym and I was burning that off. I would go on the treadmill or the elliptical, and I would watch the calories go up until I burnt off every calorie I had eaten that day. And I was only eating that yogurt, that Special K bar, and then a bowl of cereal for dinner at night. And eventually I got rid of that Special K bar and that yogurt, and I was just having the lowest calorie cereal I could find at the grocery store for dinner at night. Sometimes with milk, sometimes not with milk, because milk was more calories to me. Which, thinking about this now, it's so ridiculous, and I want to go back to myself and I want to say, it's okay. Please eat something. Eat whatever sounds good to you. Don't worry about the calories. Your body needs that. That's fuel to you. And I wish that had never happened to me, but it took over my life, and food became all that I could think about. I could be hungry, and I would put off that hunger and say, nope, not today. You're not hungry. You can wait till 11 o'clock at night for your bowl of cereal, and then you can go to bed and you can wake up for work and you'll be too busy to eat. So I did that for a couple months, probably May to July. And I was having stomach problems too. There was a pain with it as well. So I went to the doctor. They couldn't find anything. I had lost weight, obviously, because I wasn't eating. And they couldn't find anything that was causing my stomach pain. I wasn't having any other symptoms besides just like a stabbing pain in my stomach pretty much all the time. And that was another reason that I said I wasn't eating, was because my stomach hurt so bad I physically could not eat, which is true and isn't true. I could eat, and I did have really bad stomach pain, but the stomach pain was not preventing me from eating like a normal human and eating in a healthy way. So I went to an emergency room. They couldn't find anything wrong with my stomach, and they did a endoscopy and a colonoscopy. Couldn't find anything. And then that's when my parents pretty much knew there was more than just stomach pain going on. You know, there was mental problems going on too. And my parents knew I could not go back to Cincinnati, that whatever was going on needed to be fixed as soon as possible. So they really saw what was happening at this time, because I was fighting that mental battle. You know, they'd have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they'd offer me whatever they were having, and I would say, no, I'm not hungry, whatever. And I would sit on the couch and watch TV while they're eating meals. And then 11 o'clock would roll around and I would have a bowl of cereal. So they were seeing my eating habits, and when they would try to get me to eat, I would break down. I would scream at them. I would fight them. I refused to eat. I would cry, ugly cry, sobbing, because I could not get myself to do that. I was so used to eating just my bowl of cereal a day that anything else would set me off. I would just go crazy. I would never forgive myself. I would have to run it off right away. And that's eating disordered brain. So my parents called a doctor and said that they were concerned about eating disorders and my energy levels, because, and I knew this too, that my energy was non-existent. I would take a shower and be exhausted after showering. I couldn't even dry my hair. I would need to nap after taking a 10-minute shower. I couldn't walk my dog with my mom. We would take the dog on walks and I couldn't even make it to the end of my street. I live on a cul-de-sac and I couldn't make it to the end of that cul-de-sac because I had no nutrients in my body. My body was dying, basically. I had no energy. I was hurting myself in every way, shape, and form through not eating. And I was sleeping all day. I was freezing all the time. And I would wear sweatpants, sweatshirts, fuzzy socks, and this is the middle of June or July, where it's hot out, and I would need to wear all these things because I was freezing. And that's a side effect of being malnourished. No energy, always cold. I was purple most of the time from being cold. And so my parents called the doctor, and I was going to go in that Monday to be checked, but because of what my parents were telling him about activity levels and what I was eating and how long it's been since I was doing this, he said, I want you to take her to the ER tonight. I want them to just check vitals, get some blood work. We'll see where her body's at, and then we'll decide from there if she's okay to wait the weekend or if she's not okay. So I was sleeping on the couch, again, no energy. My mom woke me up and she said, I just got off the phone with the doctor. We're gonna take you to the ER just to get checked out. And I went with it. I went because I wanted to get the help. I was miserable. I didn't want to live like this, and I knew it wasn't okay. So I went to the ER that day, or that night, I should say. My dad came with us. He came home from work and we went. And they did an EKG. They took labs. I talked to multiple doctors about what was going on, when my last period was, because I was no longer getting it. what I was eating, how often I was eating, how I was feeling. So they did all these tests and asked all these questions. Well, the test came back. I was off in every lab value possible. My protein was off, potassium, sodium, everything. And these are very serious electrolytes to be off on. So they did an EKG, and that just basically tells you your heart rhythm, your heart rate, what's going on cardiac-wise. And my heart rate was in the 40s. Now, your heart rate should be 60 to 100 as a healthy heart rate. And I'm in the 40s because I'm so malnourished that my heart is being affected. When I was in the ED, you could see my spine. My dad took a picture, I'll post it here. And the doctor was feeling my stomach. And she said, I can feel your spine through your stomach. Just by palpating your abdomen, I can count every vertebrae through your stomach. And that really scared me and my parents. And that's when I really knew how bad my situation was with my heart rate, being able to feel my spine through my stomach, and all my labs being off. It was scary. Like, I knew I needed to get the help. So with my lab values being whack and my heart being whack, they had to admit me right then and there. So I went into the hospital, and I was there for 2 weeks. I think it was 12 days I was in the hospital for. And at nighttime, the first probably 3 or 4 nights, the first night especially, I was very, very sick, and I didn't even know it. That morning, the first morning I was there, the doctors came in and they said, we had the nurses calling us all night last night because while you were sleeping, your heart rate was 33, I want to say. Again, guys, 60 to 100 is the normal heart rate, but when you're sleeping, it can be lower, but it should never be 40s or 30s. And they said that the nurses and residents kept calling the attendings, asking what to do, because that's ICU status, you guys. If your heart rate is that low, you need to be in the ICU, is what they told me, and it's true. They said if I dipped into the 20s, like if I hit 29, 28, I was going to the ICU. So they let me kind of sit there in the low 30s when I was sleeping, which is still very, very dangerous. But for so many nights, we were waiting for that heart rate to get up while I was sleeping. We were waiting for me to not have positive orthostatics, which is changes in blood pressure and heart rate when I go from laying down to standing up. I couldn't get that for 2 weeks. You know, I was eating, I was doing everything, but I couldn't get those tests to go in my favor. And it was because that's how severely malnourished I was. My body needed all that food, and it still wasn't getting better. And they refed me, which was so hard for me. I had not eaten that day that I was in the ER. I hadn't eaten yet because it wasn't that 11 o'clock cereal time. So they gave me a peanut butter sandwich. And when you're in the hospital with an eating disorder, you sit in the doorway of your room facing out into the hallway or the nurse's station, and you eat. And you have 30 minutes to eat. What you don't eat, you have to drink Ensure, which nobody wants to do. And if you don't do that, they put a tube in your nose down to your stomach, an NG, and they give you your calories that way. I didn't want that. And I also didn't want to eat. So I sat there for 20 minutes that first night crying over this peanut butter, and not even in jelly, just a peanut butter sandwich. I couldn't do it. I knew the calories that were in it. from just the peanut butter alone, the calories of the bread, because I had brainwashed myself to know all these calories of all these foods. And I was basically refusing to eat this peanut butter sandwich, and it broke my parents' heart. They were crying. I was crying. And I finally, with that last 10 minutes, was like, no, I cannot keep doing this to myself. I'm going to eat this sandwich. And it was the hardest thing that I had done in that time span. But it was also the first step for recovery. And I ate the peanut butter sandwich. And yes, I'm not gonna say it was rainbows and butterflies after that. You know, I felt guilty. I felt remorse. I felt awful. But I knew it needed to be done. And every day I'd have breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, snack. And I didn't have a choice in any of the foods I was eating. I could tell them foods I liked, foods I didn't like, but ultimately it was not my decision what came up on my tray, and I was forced to eat it all. Because if you're going through an eating disorder and you're sitting in the hospital and you're eating all these meals they're putting in front of you, I know how miserable that is. I know how awful you feel physically and mentally. I was so bloated. Every hour and a half I was eating. And when you go from eating so little to eating 6 times a day, 3 meals and 3 snacks, that is a huge shock to the system. So yes, I was feeling disgusting. I felt huge. And I wasn't. Again, it was eating disorder talk. I felt like I had gained 1,000,000 pounds. And I knew that I was gaining weight because they weigh you every single morning. And they would say, okay, we're doing all right. They wouldn't say how much you gained. You weren't allowed to see your weight when they weighed you. But I knew in the back of my head that I was gaining weight. But I also knew that I needed to gain the weight. So I did. And when I got discharged, I went home. I had papers that the dietitian gave me, or gave my mom, and my mom had to check off every box and make all my meals for me, all my snacks for me, and I had to hit every box. I had to check them off every day. And then weekly, I would go to the doctor for a weigh-in. If I lost weight, they would have to do orthostatics again. And yes, I did lose weight for like the first 2 or 3 weeks. The first week out, I lost 5 pounds again. Not good. But it wasn't on purpose. I was still eating, but it just shows my body needed more than what I was even giving it at that time, which I thought was fine, and my mom thought was fine, and was 10 times more than I was eating to begin with when this all started. But it shows my body still needed more. So I felt bad, but also felt kind of good about it because, again, I hadn't been to the therapy. I hadn't retrained my brain from thinking like an eating disorder to thinking like a normal functioning brain. And they told me, you should not go back to school for your junior year. There's too much at risk here. You're too fragile. You just got out of the hospital. This is like beginning of August. You just got out of the hospital. You're supposed to start school in 2 weeks, and you're still losing weight. And I said, watch me. I'm gonna go to school. I'm gonna get better. And that's exactly what I did. I maintained my weight. I went to school. I kicked school's butt my junior year. The doctor set me up with a counselor psychologist in my hometown, and I went and talked to her, and it was a really great experience. I finally was open for therapy and cognitive behavioral change, and I really benefited from it. And in high school, I was young, I was scared, I didn't want to go to therapy, and now that I have and got so much out of it and recovered with it, I recommend it so much. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's beneficial. It's gonna help you. They're not judgmental. They want to help you. They want you to get better. So it's okay, guys. Go to therapy if that's what you need. And I would FaceTime her while I was at school. We would talk weekly, sometimes every 2 weeks, and again, with her, she held me accountable, and without her, I wouldn't have been able to make it here. I wouldn't have been able to change my thought process and accept who I am and love who I am. And I'm not gonna say I don't still struggle. I do, but I'm doing so much better. My weight is stable, my energy's normal, I'm happy. You know, I made it out. It was a really long, hard, painful journey, but I did it. I've been successful. Today was my 2-year recovery anniversary. So I went into the hospital today 2 years ago for my eating disorder, and I am wearing my NEDA, so National Eating Disorder Association t-shirt to celebrate and to film this video. So I've really come a long way in these past 2 years, and I'm really proud of it. And while I was in the hospital, I had such an amazing support system. You know, my mom was there from sunup to sundown, or she'd stay all night. My dad would come every day after work. My brother would come. My grandparents, my uncle, my best friend would come. She would work all day, take the bus back home, and then drive to the hospital to see me. My boyfriend came. He would spend the nights, and he lived 2.5 hours away at the time. I know him and his mom came that first day that I was there. I called them the night I was admitted and told them, and they were there the next morning. And, you know, I would not have been able to make it through all of this without all of them. And I owe them so much, and I'm so thankful for them, and I love them all so much. And, you know, that was a major, major help. I would not have been able to get through it alone. And I'm so glad that I had them. And I really hope that I can help somebody else who is struggling through mental health problems. And if you're in the process of recovery, or you're thinking about it, thinking about going to get help, please do it. For yourself and for me and for your loved ones. It is so worth it, and you deserve it. And it's okay to admit that there's an issue and to ask for help and to get that help. There's nothing to be ashamed of. So many more people than you think go through mental health problems, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, whether it's eating disorders, anything, bipolar. There are so many people who struggle, and there shouldn't be this negative stigma around mental health, because it makes people ashamed and scared to share their story and to help others. But really, there's so many people going through it that need to hear your story, that need to know it's gonna be okay. And it is. If you're going through the recovery process and you're feeling those feelings, just know they're temporary and you're gonna get through it. You just gotta keep fighting, keep pushing. And I know that you can do it. And I'm proud of you, and I'm here for you. If you need help, if you need support, you need someone to talk to, I'm here. You can leave a comment, you can reach out to me through my Instagram, whatever. And, you know, I'm here for all of you, and I want to help you. And together we can get through it. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope that it might help you or help somebody you know. You can share this with them. I'm here to help. I'm glad that I have now shared my story. I'm proud of myself for everything I've overcome and for putting this out there. It is very scary for me, so again, please no hate, but I wanted to share my story with everybody out there in hopes that it could touch somebody and somebody could relate, and just to know that, you know, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and I found it and you will find it too. And you know, mental health matters, and so do you. So thank you for watching, everybody. You can subscribe to my channel, you can leave a comment if you would like, and I will put my Instagram here. Feel free to give me a follow or to reach out through there if you want to talk about mental health or anything about this video. And thank you for watching. I know it's long, I'm sorry, but my story's long and I didn't want to leave anything out. So thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day.